all the work that I create is about people that I know, and I really like to work in symbols and metaphors, probably more metaphor, partially to protect the anonymity or to keep the people that it's about more anonymous. And I suppose to some degree it's anonymity for me too. But it's ways for me to make peace about certain issues that people I love care about go through in their lives. And so anyway, this body of work that I have in here, I have 10 pieces, 5 2D and 5 more 3D or more sculptural. One of the challenges I set up is I really try to narrow my objects or aspects down. I kind of like the challenge of putting limitations on myself so I can really narrow my focus on what's the most important factors and then how do they relate in a space. And so I talk to students a lot about weeding your garden out. And so I try to weed my garden out and get down to the most essential things that way. That can be a little tricky sometimes, but I think it forces me to think harder and hopefully come up with images that are more interesting. I'm really interested in space. And so, for instance, on the 2D pieces, they're pretty large pieces and there's a lot of what would be considered by most blank space or not important. But I also talk about the importance of figure and ground reversal. And so in this piece, for instance, we would look at this imagery here as the figure and the white space is ground, and they're equally important because of the concept. And I think the way that I usually look at empty space, it serves a powerful place in really isolating or bringing more attention to the plight of whoever these are about. And so it's not that I didn't want to work with more space, because I actually am, but it's just has to be considered for what it is, and it's that isolating factor. So in these pieces, the 2D pieces, I've narrowed it down to really 3 essential things. And most of the imagery in all of these pieces, I guess we can move it around, is I looked at different types of traps. And so there's the trap, which is what we often find ourselves in. And then every piece has a small paint chip. And I refer to that as the attractor. And so there's kind of a protagonist-antagonist situation, whether it's actual people or a situation that someone's in. And so there's the trap, there's the attractor. We often know things that aren't good for us, but we still are attracted to them somehow. And then the figurative elements like the hands or maybe the faces either serve as that antagonist or protagonist, or maybe the vulnerable in that sense. And so again, the space around just puts a hyper focus on that situation and that person. And for me, it's a vulnerable space. So that's kind of the 2D pieces. And then the 3D pieces, I was thinking about relationships, and especially the ones that maybe are going to cease to exist anymore. And there's a lot of pain with that. And so I love to fish. And I don't use live bait when I fish, but I found this frog with a hook in it, and I thought it was really curious. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but it looked like it was vulnerable and had been abused somehow for another purpose. It certainly wasn't, I think, serving its original purpose. So I gathered up these different things like a crawfish and a worm and a cricket and a little shiner fish, and then also the frog. And they served as probably the abused in the situation. And then I put together these mathematical symbols, and one is an 8 and one is a 0. And those are very particular for the person who's in control and the person who's not. And then just to force myself on a title and to also give a narrative to these as well as, I'm not sure most people would know about the band Husker Du. But I looked at all of their songs and I decided that I would limit myself on a title and a phrase for the work based on titles of their songs. And I found some that really kind of spoke to me as far as the vulnerability and the pain of these things. So that's where they're at. I don't always talk much about my work because it's highly personal. I will if I think someone's really interested. But I also try to set them up in a way that hopefully universally someone could get a sense of something out of it. So that's kind of the gist.